The mysterious harpy. The Queen of the Night relief, created around 1800 BC, is one of the most enigmatic artifacts of Mesopotamia. Also known as the Burney relief, it depicts a winged goddess with bird claws instead of feet, standing on the backs of two lions. On either side of her are owls, symbolizing power over the darkness of the night and the spirit world. The identity of the depicted goddess remains a subject of debate. Some researchers believe that this is Ishtar, Inanna, the Babylonian goddess of love, war, and fertility. Others suggest that the relief depicts Archaeological, the dark mistress of the underworld, Ishtar's sister. The symbolism of the relief indicates the power and supernatural strength of the goddess. The relief was probably a cult object associated with religious rituals or magical practices. Its rich detail and monumentality speak to the importance of the depicted deity and the beliefs of the era. Today, this artifact is kept in the British Museum. Calaveras skull, a false find. There have already been many deceptions associated with ancient skulls throughout history, and each skull has its own legend. Josiah Whitney was a famous American geologist who taught at Harvard University and chaired the California Geological Survey. However, his failure was to get involved in the Calaveras skull scandal. Miners found the skull at a depth of 40 meters under a layer of lava. Archaeologist Whitney presented it in July 1866 as the oldest human remains ever found, about 1 million years old. A little later, there were doubts about the authenticity of the skull, but the archaeologist had a lot of supporters. Nearly 3 decades later, William Henry Holmes of the Smithsonian Institution examined the Calaveras skull and found modern features that indicated it was a forgery. Further investigation revealed that the skull had been planted by miners who wanted to play a trick on Whitney. The final proof was confirmed in 1992 when radiocarbon dating found the skull to be only 1,000 years old. This story is a reminder of the need to think critically and be able to collaborate with experts in various fields of knowledge. Archaeologists and scientists always want to single-handedly attribute all achievements to themselves. Therefore, having discovered another artifact, they are in no hurry to tell their colleagues about it, but immediately rush to tell the whole world that the find is genuine. Creepy mosaic in Italy. The first find in this video will be a bit unusual. In Italy, archaeologists have found a villa where the ancient Roman emperors lived and found 2 mosaics with Medusa there. Medusa is the heroine of the Greek myth. She had hair made of snakes and her eyes turned people to stone. How this mythical character deserved to be depicted in a mosaic, I will try to figure it out. Archaeologists have discovered mosaics in the round room of the Antonine Villa, named after the Antonine dynasty that ruled the Roman Empire from 138 to 193 AD. In the image, Medusa looks into the distance. Mosaics of mythical creatures are located in 2 niches in a round room, one in the northwest and the other in the southeast. There are 2 more niches, but no similar images were found there. Scientists do not yet know what the room was used for and why there were images of Medusa. However, in the 2nd century, creature heads were a popular decoration in the Roman world. And from Italy, we will go to China to study the most ancient tools of labor. A piece of cake. On February 10, 1840, Queen Victoria married Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg in Gotha. At their wedding, an impressive cake weighing about 136 kilograms was served. The 3-tiered treat was decorated with miniature figurines of the bride and groom in Roman attire, as well as an exquisite retinue made of refined sugar, which was then a truly luxurious and rare product. The inside of the cake was generously soaked in alcohol and filled with lemon, elderberry, sugar, and dried fruit. However, there was a problem. Victoria was on a diet, and the guests, it seemed, were not so hungry as to overcome a cake weighing more than 100 weight. Therefore, at the end of the celebration, the Queen ordered that the cake be cut into small pieces, which were then placed in tin boxes and distributed to friends, family, and other honored guests. Thus began the tradition of giving guests pieces of the wedding cake, a tradition that even at the royal court took the form of a keepsake. Many owners of these souvenirs decided not to eat them because they were a valuable gift from the Queen herself. Some slices remained untouched and have survived to this day. Today, pieces of Victoria's wedding cake are true relics. Several of them are in the Royal Trust collection, and one such piece was sold at auction in 2016 for £1,500. If this seems like an impressive sum, it is worth noting that in 1998, part of the wedding cake of King Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson, dated 1937, was sold at Sotheby's for $29900. But surprisingly, Victoria's wedding cake is still edible thanks to its high alcohol content. Theoretically, it could be tried today, although it would most likely remain just a legend. Babies in the sewers. In 1988, archaeologists made a shocking discovery in Ashkelon, southern Israel. The skeletons of about 100 newborn babies were found under the baths in a sewer dating back to the late Roman, early Byzantine period. Upon examination, it became clear that the babies had lived less than 3 days, and their remains showed no signs of violence or injury. Initially, scientists assumed that they were girls, since many societies at the time had a practice of getting rid of newborn females. However, further analysis showed that among the remains were both boys and girls. One possible reason for the death of the babies could be the occupation of women working in the baths. The children were probably abandoned by prostitutes who, being forced to lead such a life, could not afford to take care of the babies. The story of Ashkelon sheds light on the dark realities of the past, showing how terrible the times were that women had to get rid of their newborn children. Ancient Empire Tomb. The history of China is unique and very interesting. It seems to me that much more needs to be said about this amazing country, so that everyone associates archaeology not only with ancient Egypt. So a few years ago, archaeologists found an ancient tomb in China, built during the Jin Empire. This empire was located on the territory of northern China and today's far east of Russia. Workers discovered the stone tomb in 2019, 650 kilometers from Beijing. Archaeologists have learned that the tomb is decorated with figures of lions, sea anemones, flowers, and guardian spirits. One figure of a woman, the other of a man. Inside the tomb are bricks that look like carved wood, possibly without paint. The remains of 3 people were found in the tomb. 2 adults, 50, 60 years old, and 1 child, 6, 8 years old. In the same place, researchers found a land tag with inscriptions showing that the tomb was built between 1190 and 1196. At that time, this region was under the rule of the Jin state. The imperial family came from the Jurchens, a semi-nomadic people of northeastern China. Today, their relatives are Manchus and Evenks. In 1207, the population of this state was 53 million people. Information about the age of the tomb will help date other structures in the region. From China, we will go to Israel, where another terrible burial awaits us. Puppet dolls with removable heads. Archaeologists have discovered unique clay figurines in El Salvador that are about 2,400 years old. These artifacts, found in the ruins of a pyramid in San Isidro, resemble puppets. They have open mouths, and larger specimens have removable heads with holes through which a string could be threaded for control. Researchers call these finds Bolinas figurines. Similar artifacts have previously been found in Guatemala. Among the 5 figurines, a male character is found for the first time with noticeable patterns resembling tattoos. Archaeologists believe that the dolls were used in rituals that imitated real or mythological events. In ancient Mesoamerica, it was believed that creating an image of a person literally brings them to life, allowing them to be present even at a distance. The discovery confirms that ancient El Salvador was part of a complex cultural network linked to Guatemala, Panama, and Nicaragua. Persian princess, fake mummy, or modern murder. In 2000, the Pakistani authorities purchased a mummy presented as a Persian princess and held a press conference to show everyone this unique find. It was assumed that the mummy was the daughter of King Xerxes I, dated to around 600 BC AD. The discovery sparked an international dispute between Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan over who is the rightful owner of the mummy. However, after conducting real research, it became clear that the mummy is a fake. The coffin in which the mummy was located was made of wood, which was only 250 years old. The mummy itself was much younger, belonged to a 20-year-old woman, and was made just a few years ago. Thus, the study of the mummy became the investigation of a modern murder. The incident served as a reminder of the complexities involved in the antiques and fakes market, and the need for thorough research before an artifact is recognized as a genuine historical discovery. From this story, we can conclude that many mummies hide cases of real modern murders. Antenna at the bottom of the sea. In 1964, the research vessel USNS El Tanin was exploring the depths of the Southern Ocean and accidentally took a photo of something incomprehensible. At a depth of 3,900 meters, the camera recorded an object that looked like a radio antenna. What is this? Another lost signal from aliens? The news quickly spread through the newspapers, and everyone decided that this was confirmation of extraterrestrial intelligence. But everything turned out to be not so simple. After a while, scientists found out that this is not an alien technology. In fact, it was a deep-sea sponge that really looked like an antenna from a distance. As it turned out, nature also has its own design style. What does this picture mean? We have a real ancient Egyptian relief here. It is older than you think, created somewhere in the 14th century BC. It is now in the famous Metropolitan Museum in New York. Look at those narrow palm columns. It is most likely a palace. In temples, the columns were thicker and decorated with papyrus. In the picture, you can see how the attendant near the brazier throws coals and the flame takes off rapidly. Such scenes gave an idea of the bustling life at the palace, where everyone was busy with their own stuff. The relief is made of sandstone. The same material was used in the buildings of Pharaoh Akhenaten. Mysterious floating island. The floating island of El Ojo in Argentina has inspired many speculations and theories, from a UFO haven to a place where ancient spirits live. However, scientists give a more rational explanation for its existence, considering it to be the result of natural processes of erosion and the movement of water masses. This mysterious round island is located in the swampy delta of the Parana River. Its name means eye in translation, due to its striking resemblance to a perfectly round eye when viewed from above. The island attracted attention in 2016 when Argentine director Sergio Noispierre explored the area for a documentary. From a bird's-eye view, El Ojo impresses with its shape and purity. The water around it, despite its apparent blackness, is crystal clear, which is unusual for the turbid waters of the delta. The diameter of the island is 118 meters, and its rotation around its axis is a consequence of the action of currents, which also polish the shore of the lake, forming perfect outlines. This process is ongoing, and scientists believe that it explains the round appearance of the island and the lake. El Ojo first appeared on satellite images about 20 years ago. Its origins are still shrouded in mystery. How and when it separated from the mainland is still unknown. Locals, although they knew about its existence, preferred to avoid the place, believing that an ancient deity lived there. Some put forward theories about UFOs or even a Nazi base, but there is no evidence to support these versions. The oldest Scottish tartan. A piece of cloth found in the Scottish Highlands in the early 1980s is the oldest surviving tartan, dating back to the 16th century, a new study suggests. Tartan is a traditional Scottish plaid fabric associated with ancestral groups known as clans. The pattern was named the Glen Affric tartan after the village where it was found. The tartan is perfectly preserved thanks to the fact that it was buried in a peat bog with a low oxygen content. In Scotland, old textiles are very rare because of the soil, which is not conducive to their preservation. To determine the age of the Glen Affric tartan, the Scottish Tartan Authority commissioned dye analysis and radiocarbon testing. The researchers examined the 4 colors used and found no man-made or semi-synthetic materials, indicating a date earlier than the 1750s. Radiocarbon testing has indicated a period of tartan creation from 1500 to 1655. At this time, the Stuart monarchs were on the Scottish throne. Mary, Queen of Scots, and her father James V. Tartan is not associated with high status, but rather with working-class outdoor wear. Non-noble items from the 16th century are quite rare, so this piece is an amazing find. It is believed that the oldest tartan discovered in Scotland, the Falkirk tartan, dated to the 3rd century, has a simpler checkered structure than the Glen Affric tartan. However, in this case, only a small fragment of it was found. Noah's Ark found. According to the Bible, Noah's Ark saved people and animals from the Great Flood. Now, 5,000 years later, researchers have once again turned their attention to one of the most mysterious places, the Durupinar Formation in Turkey. This 163-meter-long structure surprisingly matches the biblical description of the legendary vessel in Sisyphus. Scientists from Istanbul Technical University and Agri Ibrahim Sesin University have been studying the area since 2021. A recent analysis of 30 soil samples revealed clay, marine sediments, and shellfish remains dating back 3,500 to 5,000 years. This suggests that the region did indeed experience a massive flood. The formation is located just 30 kilometers from Mount Ararat, where, according to the Bible, the ark came to rest after the flood. The dimensions of the structure are also close to the biblical ones. The supposed length of the ark is 157 meters and Durupinar is 163. However, many geologists are skeptical about the hypothesis. They believe that Durupinar is just a natural formation. Despite this, the discovery continues to arouse interest and new research. The dentures of the first U.S. president. The common myth that George Washington's dentures were made of wood is actually untrue. His dentures were created from a variety of materials, including teeth taken from his slaves, as well as hippopotamus ivory and metals such as gold and lead. This fact has often been hidden or distorted in historical accounts, likely due to the ethical concerns surrounding the use of slave teeth. Washington suffered from severe dental problems throughout his life, and his personal records show that he purchased teeth from slaves to use in his dentures. This practice, while common in the 18th century, adds a darker tone to the image of the first U.S. president. These dentures, with their macabre composition and far from being comfortable, were very restrictive for Washington, and he was in constant discomfort, as can be seen in his facial expressions in many portraits. It is 14.6 million years old. Archaeologists have discovered a unique find in New Zealand, the fossil of an ancient bee that lived 14.6 million years ago. The new species is called Laeoproctus beridonovani and belongs to the genus Laeoproctus, whose representatives are still common in Australasia and South America. A 6.4 millimeters long fossil fragment was found in Miocene deposits in the Otago region in the Hindon Mar area. Scientists believe that this species lived here long before modern bees appeared, and its presence in the Miocene fauna opens up new questions about the evolution of insects in this region. If Laeoproctus lived in New Zealand as early as 14.6 million years ago, it would have had enough time to develop many subspecies. However, today only 18 endemic species are known, which raises questions among biologists about the reasons for such limited evolution. Bas-reliefs with mechanisms. Sometimes we see faces, animals, or objects in the clouds. This is called pareidolia, when our brain draws familiar images where they actually do not exist. What about space pareidolia? Remember the face on Mars that turned out to be just a mountain? A similar situation happened in Egypt, in the city of Dendera. In an ancient temple, archaeologists discovered a bas-relief that depicts a gas discharge lamp. Did the Egyptians use electricity? In fact, this image combines a flower and a snake, which symbolize stability and fertility. But in the Temple of Osiris, found a helicopter and an airship. But even here there are no surprises. These turned out to be traces of old plaster, which eventually wore off and created such interesting drawings. Vampires in Poland. The remains of a 17th century child have been found at an archaeological site in Poland with a lock on his leg. The researchers think that the locals were afraid that this child might come to life like a vampire. In the Middle Ages in Europe, many believed in vampires and used various methods to keep the dead in the grave. Recently, archaeologists, including Dariusz Polinsky of the Nicolaus Copernicus University, discovered an unusual burial near Dąbrowa Chelmińska in Poland. It was a woman with a lock on her leg and a sickle around her neck, and here is a new discovery: vampire. The child was only 5 or 7 years old when he passed away. He was buried face down as if his activities were feared even in death. In the Middle Ages, such burials were made so that the deceased bite the ground and did not threaten people. And nearby they found a cluster of skeletons of other children and a fragment of a jaw with a green tint. Most likely, a copper object was placed in the mouth of the deceased, hence this color. The Great Comet of 1861. The 19th century was a special time for those who loved to look at the stars. During this period, from 1811 to 1882, people observed as many as 8 great comets that amazed the imagination of scientists and ordinary people. These celestial phenomena inspired artists, composers, and even amateur astronomers. Among all these comets, Donati's Comet of 1858 occupies a special place. It was the first comet that was successfully photographed. But an even more amazing event was the appearance of the Great Comet of 1861. It turned out to be so close to the Earth that our planet literally passed through its tail. For 2 days, this tail obscured the sun's rays, creating an unusual twilight even during the day. The comet was discovered by a farmer from Australia, John Tebbutt. This young amateur astronomer noticed it in the constellation Eridanus on May 13, 1861. At first, he mistook it for a star, but later realized it was a comet. Convinced of his discovery, Tebbutt sent a letter to the local observatory and even published an article in the Sydney Morning Herald. The news of the comet's discovery quickly spread throughout the world. In June 1861, the comet was already observed in the northern hemisphere. Amazing descriptions of its brightness and size were published in newspapers in England. The comet's tail occupied a huge part of the sky and was visible even against the background of daylight. The real sensation was that the Earth crossed the comet's tail, which caused rare atmospheric phenomena. The sky was painted in yellow and reddish hues, and the sun's light became unusually weak. The magnificence of the comet impressed contemporaries, and for John Tebbutt, its discovery became the beginning of a brilliant career. Later, he built his own observatory and made many valuable observations. His contribution to astronomy is immortalized on the Australian $100 note, and the Great Comet of 1861 remains one of the most spectacular events in the history of space observations. Ancient hair. This terrible epidemic has a very long history. Various drugs have been popular for thousands of years, and in those days, millions of people around the world died from this poison. Archaeologists have found the oldest case of drug use in Europe on the island of Minorca near Spain. This man's hair is over 3,000 years old. Scientists studying the cave of Carix discovered that our ancestors performed a strange ritual. The dead man's hair was cut off, dyed red, and placed in small boxes made of horn and wood. The researchers analyzed the hair using sophisticated methods and found alkaloids, scopolamine, and ephedrine, substances that cause hallucinations. It's no secret that researchers can detect drugs in human hair and nails even after months and years. Scientists think that ancient people used vision-inducing plants such as mandrake, henbane, and datura. In addition, they ate ephedra with ephedrine, a stimulant. Now we can say with certainty that psychostimulants were popular in Europe more than 3,000 years ago and most likely created a big problem for humanity even then. Sacrifice or war trophy. Archaeologists have found a Roman enamel brooch from the 2nd century AD. It was discovered at an Iron Age settlement in South Ayrshire, Scotland. The artifact may have been used in a foundation sacrifice ritual, providing new information about contacts between the Romans and local Britons. The excavations were carried out on the site of the William Grant & Sons distillery, where researchers found the remains of a large wooden house and a fortified palisade. The brooch was lying in a foundation ditch, which may indicate its ritual significance. Such brooches are found on the borders of the Roman Empire, in Gaul, Switzerland, and along the Rhine. Scientists suggest that it may have come to Scotland as a war trophy, the result of trade, or an offering to the gods. The Curragh settlement, where the find was made, was in a strategic location. Although there were no Roman forts nearby, archaeologists have discovered traces of an ancient military camp. In addition to the brooch, artifacts from the Neolithic and Bronze Ages were found, confirming that the area had been inhabited for thousands of years. Piltdown Man, the fake missing link. I myself have already talked about this find in my previous videos. In 1912, British amateur archaeologist Charles Dawson announced the discovery of skull fragments that were supposed to be the missing link between ape and man. Reconstructed with the help of paleontologist Arthur Smith Woodward, the skull has been identified as Eoanthropus dawsoni, or early Dawson man, from 500,000 years ago. This discovery was to become a world-class sensation and put an end to human evolution once and for all. However, in 1953, the scientific community concluded that Piltdown Man was a fake, created by combining human and ape bones. This discovery undermined the credibility of the scientific community and still serves as a reminder of the possible errors and fraud in archaeology. As for the identity of the perpetrator of the forgery, it is assumed that it could be Charles Dawson himself, but it was not possible to establish his participation in the hoax. The story of Piltdown Man remains a sad reminder that archaeologists can deliberately lie, and most importantly, create deliberately false ancient exhibits and mislead all of humanity for many years. Quarry Skull. The next incredible story is about the famous Piltdown Man. We are going to 1912 in the small village of Piltdown in England. The bones of an ancient man who lived more than 500,000 years ago were found in a gravel pit. But no ordinary man's bones. This skull looked like a mixture of ape and human, like a missing link in evolution. Archaeologists, including the famous Charles Dawson, were delighted. They even named the find after him, Eoanthropus dawsoni. More bones and a fang were found in the quarry, which definitely belonged to this ancient man. Piltdown Man became a celebrity. He was considered the ancestor of modern people. However, in 1953, the truth was revealed. It was all a fake. The skull was painted and made to look like an ancient one, and the jaw belonged to an orangutan. Even the fang was painted. Many suspect Dawson himself of creating this fabrication. There are other suspects, including the famous writer Arthur Conan Doyle. But the mystery remained unsolved. Piltdown Man has become one of the most notorious archaeological hoaxes. As you can see, even scientists can be deceived. Did you believe in this story? New ecosystem under the seabed. With the help of an underwater robot, a team of scientists from around the world, including Dr. Monica Bright, has discovered a stunning ecosystem in volcanic cavities. And yes, this is in a place where the temperature can reach up to 368 degrees. We used to think that there could be no life there. Among the dark waters and hot springs, scientists have found a world inhabited by colorful worms, shellfish, crabs, and even bacteria that instead of sunlight feed on minerals. Incredible, right? And the most interesting thing is that some of these creatures, like the giant worms Riftia pachyptyla, travel through the seabed exploring new corners of their underwater home. However, researchers warn that our curiosity and desire for prey may endanger this unique world. It is important for us to respect the mysterious creatures in the depths of the ocean. 3 amazing artifacts. Archaeologists have made a discovery that could change our understanding of the history of ancient Egypt. The lost tomb of Pharaoh Thutmose II was recently found, an event comparable to the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. However, unlike the famous Golden Boy tomb, the tomb of Thutmose II was badly damaged. After the pharaoh's death, the room was flooded and most of the relics were probably moved to another location. One of the key artifacts is fragments of alabaster vessels decorated with the name of Thutmose II. These duck-shaped vessels were used in rituals and testified to the high status of their owner. The inscription on them helped confirm that the tomb did indeed belong to this pharaoh. Another important find is fragments of paintings that fell from the ceiling and walls. The researchers found that the ceiling was once painted blue and dotted with stars, and the walls were decorated with texts from the Book of Amduat, an ancient Egyptian text that tells of the journey of the sun god Ra in the afterlife. Such images were only found in the tombs of pharaohs and close nobles. Another artifact found was a wooden rod that could have been part of a spear or a ceremonial fan used for fanning the pharaoh. The shaft bears an inscription with the title of the king, which became further evidence that the tomb belonged to Thutmose II. Creepy social experiment. In the 1960s, Germany had the shocking practice of handing over orphans and homeless children to people with pedophilic tendencies. This was done under the espoused theory that such adults would show special care and attention to the children. It was assumed that these people's desire for close communication would help create a warm and caring environment for the children. This practice, known as the Kentler experiment, was initiated by psychologist Helmut Kentler and was carried out mainly in West Berlin. Kentler claimed that children in these families received more emotional support and care. The experiment was a government initiative and continued for decades, despite numerous indications of harm to the children. It was only many years later that the program was seriously criticized and victims began to receive compensation. Great Battle Site. In the Tollens Valley, Germany, archaeologists have discovered one of the oldest battlefields in Europe, dating back some 3,250 years. It all began in 1996, when researchers found a bone sticking out of the riverbank. This became the starting point for the discovery of a real warrior cemetery. To date, more than 12,500 bones have been found belonging to hundreds of people who fought, as well as about 300 bronze and stone artifacts. Among the finds are arrowheads, spears, swords, clubs, and protective equipment. What is unique about the discovery is that the weapons often remain right in the skeletons, confirming how brutal the battle was. Many warriors died right in the water or on the shore, and their bodies remained untouched for centuries. This place reveals to us an unknown page of the history of the Bronze Age. Perhaps a battle took place here between different tribes fighting for territory or resources. Tollens proves that wars were fought long before antiquity and that ancient armies were more organized than previously thought. Singapore Stone. In front of you is a huge sandstone stone which is several centuries old. It stood at the mouth of the Singapore River, like a staunch guardian of time. On it you can see strange symbols. This is an inscription that could not be deciphered. It may have been written in Old Javanese or Sanskrit. Maybe it was ordered by some powerful madman. This stone is even associated with the legendary strongman of the 14th century named Badang. They say he threw a stone into the river and later stone columns were erected in his honor. But what happened to it next? In 1843, the stone was blown up to widen the passage at the mouth of the river. Only pieces of it remain, and one of them is now in the National Museum of Singapore as a national treasure. This stone is not just an old piece of sandstone. This is the mystery that scientists are trying to solve. The secret that this inscription holds will tell us more about the past and the people who lived in ancient times. Perhaps technology from the future will help us decipher it. The moon was created by extraterrestrial civilizations. The moon, our satellite, is full of mysteries that still excite the minds of scientists. Its size is 27.4% the size of the Earth, but its mass is only 1.2%. These proportions, together with the data that the moon rings like a bell when struck by meteorites, suggest that it may be hollow. The depth of the craters is also surprising. Regardless of the size of the meteorites, it remains almost the same. 4.5 kilometers, which may indicate the presence of a strong protective layer under the surface. The composition of the moon adds intrigue. On its surface, processed metals such as brass and radioactive elements, including uranium-236 and neptunium-237, which are not found in nature, have been found. The moon is also disproportionately large for its satellite. It is 6 times larger than any other relative to the size of its planet. Its unique stability without hesitation also sets it apart from the celestial bodies. Mathematical coincidences further enhance the sense of artificiality. The distance to the Sun is 108 times its diameter, just as the distance to the Moon is 108 times its size, and its ideal geometry allows it to completely cover the Sun during eclipses. Also, the Moon always faces the Earth with one side, which is not typical for satellites, and stabilizes the Earth's axis, affecting the climate and biorhythms. These features suggest that the moon is not just a natural object, but perhaps the result of artificial intervention, leaving us with more questions than answers. Panda in the tomb. The great Chinese Emperor Wen, who lived 2,200 years ago, passed away. And here's what's interesting. Near his last refuge, archaeologists discovered the remains of a giant panda and a tapir. Until that moment, scientists did not even suspect that tapirs could live in China during the reign of the emperor. And many other animals were found near the tomb, from mighty tigers to peacocks and golden-nosed monkeys. Many of them, unfortunately, are now endangered. Statuette of Hecate. In a mysterious corner of Turkey in the city of Kelenderis, archaeologists have made an incredible discovery. Hidden under the layers of earth was a 3-headed statue of the goddess Hecate, and next to it was ancient pottery, like the pages of a lost diary of past times. Since 1987, researchers have been trying to unravel the secrets of Kelenderis, and it seems that this year they succeeded. The main treasure of the expedition is a unique statue of Hecate. These 3-headed figures were placed at crossroads, serving as symbols of borders. Hecate is a real mystery of antiquity, the goddess of magic, the lord of the night, and the patroness of crossroads. Dr. Iden, who leads this expedition, emphasized the deep connection between Kelendaris and another ancient city of Lagina. The Forgotten Stone. In the heart of Lebanon, not far from the ancient temple complex of Baalbek, lies one of the largest processed stone blocks in history. This giant monolith, known as the Forgotten Stone, is impressive in size, 19.6 meter long, 6 meter wide, and at least 5.5 meters high. Its weight is estimated at around 1,500 tons, the equivalent of 200 African elephants. Some researchers believe that the stone was intended for an even grander structure than Baalbek itself. However, for unknown reasons, it was never delivered to the construction site. The Baalbek temple complex, famous for its colossal megaliths, was built during the Roman rule in the first 3rd centuries AD. However, the mysterious platforms of giant blocks, including the famous trilithon, could have appeared much earlier. Who were the ancient builders who processed and attempted to move such massive stones? Perhaps Baalbek is the legacy of an older and more highly developed civilization, the traces of which remain unsolved. Rock crystal dagger. In the megalithic tomb of Montelirio Tolos, located in the southwestern part of Spain, archaeologists have discovered a unique artifact, a rock crystal dagger dating back to about 3000 BC. This 22-centimeter dagger has been preserved almost completely, including the handle and sheath made of ivory. Found in a separate chamber of the tomb, the dagger clearly had a special meaning for the deceased. Scientists assume that this dagger was used for ritual purposes, since rock crystal in ancient times was considered a symbol of purity and connection with the spirit world. Processing crystal required skill, since it is a hard and fragile material, so such an object was extremely valuable. Perhaps the dagger served as a symbol of the high status of the owner and was used in rituals associated with the cult of ancestors or gods. People are smarter than we thought. Archaeologists have discovered 27 bone tools dating back 1.5 million years in Tanzania. These finds prove that ancient people mastered the production of bone tools about 1 million years earlier than previously thought. Scientists believe that the processing of bone to create tools began about 500,000 years ago. However, new finds show that even then ancient people used a technique similar to stone processing. They chipped off small pieces, giving the bones the desired shape. Research has shown that these tools are made from the bones of large animals, elephants, hippos, and ancient bulls. This suggests that people consciously chose durable materials for their tools. The transition from working with stone to bone was an important intellectual leap in human history. Ancient people did not just copy familiar techniques, but also adapted them to new materials, which indicates the development of thinking and cognitive abilities. Petrified bullet. Mysterious 2,200-year-old bullet found inside stone in Crimea. Yeah, you heard me right, a bullet. In those days, small arms and gunpowder did not yet exist. Researchers discovered it when the stone cracked. How did the bullet end up inside the ancient stone? This find could change the whole history. Could it be that a bullet from the future hit the past and lain in the ground for several millennia? In any case, the artifact is shrouded in mystery, and we can only guess what really happened. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. Delhi, purple sapphire. This story begins with a Hindu temple where the mystical Delhi purple sapphire was kept, but it was actually an amethyst. During the Indian Rebellion of 1857, Colonel Ferris took the stone for himself. He did not know that horrors awaited him ahead, loss of fortune and health. And the same thing happened to his son. The writer Edward Heron Allen became the owner of the amethyst in 1890, but bad luck continued to haunt him. He even tried to drown the stone, but to no avail. As a result, the stone, as if stained with blood, ended up in a safe and then in the London Museum of Natural History. No one else dared to own this stone. So if you suddenly come across this stone, be careful. There are curses in archaeology. Don't you believe it? Subscribe to my channel and I will tell you many more amazing stories. In the Bronze Age, they traded cities. The noisy earthquake in Turkey in 2023 brought not only destruction, but also discovery. In Kahramanmaraş, where everything happened, there is an ancient mound of Tel Achan. There once was the city of Alalak, a real center of the Bronze Age. Alalak was founded in the 2nd millennium BC. It was part of Yamhad, the gigantic empire of that era. Palaces stood there as early as 2000 BC. Immediately, the mysterious Yarim Lim comes across our eyes. Who is he? Brother? Son? This question has plagued scholars for a long time until recent findings point to his fraternal relationship with the ruler of Yamhad. And so after the earthquake, archaeologists discovered a clay tablet. It's got cuneiform on it. It was an agreement on the sale of an entire city. And what is most interesting, the buyer was our Yarim Lim guy. It looks like an old receipt from a store that hasn't been opened yet. For a long time it was thought that cities were donated or exchanged but not sold. This plate changes everything. Extraordinary burial unearthed. A unique artifact has been unearthed in a 6th century AD female burial in eastern Lincolnshire, England. A Roman cup dating to the 3rd century AD. The find, made during excavations at the Scramby Cemetery, explores the interaction between Anglo-Saxon and Roman cultures and sheds light on the burial customs of the time. The copper alloy cup was found in the grave of a young woman designated Ski 18. The deceased was also found to have 2 brooches and bracelets. The placement of the artifact next to the woman's head suggests its symbolic significance. The cup, known as the Scramby cup, is in excellent condition. It measures 5.7 centimeters high and holds around 280 milliliters. Its decoration is Roman in style, with crescent and heart patterns covered in red, aquamarine, and bluish-violet enamel, demonstrating the skill of Roman craftsmen. It is believed that the bowl was made in France and brought to England in the 3rd century AD. Analysis of the inside of the bowl revealed traces of unheated pork fat. This may indicate that it was used for ritual or medicinal purposes. Pig fat was used to treat infections at the time, which is consistent with Byzantine texts of the period. The uniqueness of the find is also that the bowl was preserved intact, unlike most Roman artifacts which are usually found in fragments. Chinese Star Atlas. In 1907, a unique find was discovered in the caves of the city of Dunhuang in China, a star atlas created in the mid-7th century. This ancient document is considered the oldest known astronomical chart. The atlas reflects the deep understanding of Chinese astronomers of the structure of the celestial vault, significantly surpassing the knowledge available to Europe at that time. The Dunhuang map is striking in its accuracy. It contains images of not only large but also smaller constellations, as well as dim stars that had long remained unnoticed on Western star charts. Unlike Western traditions where stars were connected to form mythological figures, Chinese astronomers used simple imaginary lines to group stars. This allowed them to maintain scientific rigor and avoid subjective interpretations. The atlas represents an important stage in the development of astronomy, showing how far the ancient Chinese had advanced in space exploration. It is possible that this map was used not only for astronomical observations, but also for forecasts and navigation, which made it a tool of strategic importance. Some researchers believe that such precise knowledge of the starry sky could be connected with observations of unusual objects in the sky. Legends of ancient China are full of references to heavenly chariots and luminous phenomena, which gives grounds to connect such star atlases with interest in extraterrestrial phenomena. Surrounded by 2 goddesses. In 1908, archaeologists made a stunning discovery. 4,500-year-old statues of Pharaoh Menkaure hidden in the sands of Giza. These sculptures have been preserved in almost perfect condition, demonstrating the highest skill of ancient Egyptian sculptors. Menkaure was not just a ruler, but the builder of one of the great pyramids, and here he is depicted surrounded by 2 goddesses. To the left of the pharaoh stands Hathor, the goddess of love, motherhood, and the sky, symbolizing protection and divine patronage. To the right is a female figure personifying one of the nomes, regions of Egypt, emphasizing the importance of the king as the unifier of the country. These compositions not only exalted the pharaoh, but also emphasized his connection with the gods. The sculptures of Menkaure are some of the most impressive examples of ancient Egyptian art. They lift the curtain on the past, allowing us to glimpse how the Egyptians perceived power, divinity, and kingship. Sacrifice under the pyramid. At Shimao, an ancient Bronze Age fortified settlement located along the Great Wall of China, archaeologists have discovered astonishing evidence of ancient rituals. 6 pits filled with skulls were found beneath a step pyramid at the center of the settlement. These ritual pits contained the remains of approximately 80 young girls, indicating human sacrifice. Sacrifices were indeed common in ancient China and were carried out for a variety of reasons. For example, as offerings to the Hebo river god or as part of burial rituals where slaves or concubines were sent to the afterlife with their masters. However, the exact purpose of the Shimao girls' sacrifices remains a mystery to scholars. Thailand's oldest child. Archaeologists have made an incredible discovery in the Tim Din Cave in Thailand. They found the remains of a child who lived about 29,000 years ago. This discovery became the oldest human burial in the country and opens a completely new page in the history of ancient Thailand. Excavations in the cave began in 2020, but only recently was it possible to discover a fully preserved skeleton of a child buried in a special ritual pose, arms and legs tightly pressed to the body, which indicates the use of bandages or ropes. Traces of a fire were found around. Ancient people made fire during the funeral rite, probably believing in its cleansing power. Interestingly, archaeologists discovered ancient rock paintings, animal bones, and stone tools near the burial. This suggests that the cave was an important place not only for burials, but also for the lives of primitive people for thousands of years. It is possible that it was here that the first cultural traditions of the ancient inhabitants of Southeast Asia originated. Incredible floor mosaic. In the Turkish village of Salkaya, located in eastern Anatolia, a farmer accidentally discovered an ancient floor mosaic while planting saplings. The 84-square-meter mosaic is believed to date back to the late Roman or early Byzantine period. It amazes with its size, intricate geometric patterns, and images of many animals and plants, such as a lion, ibex, greyhound, deer, bear, and Anatolian leopard. The farmer who discovered the artifact, Mehmet Emin Sual, reported the find to the local museum directorate and the gendarmerie. Excavations began with the support of the Turkish Ministry of Culture and Tourism. During the excavations, ruins of a church and a wine cellar were found next to the mosaic, confirming its historical value. The mosaic is well preserved and is an important discovery for the region. Iron in the Bronze Age. And how can one explain the existence of iron in the Bronze Age? After all, after the Stone Age, the Bronze Age follows, and only then the Iron Age. Is this clear evidence of time travel? The answer is simple and at the same time mysterious. Meteorites. Yes, it was in meteorites that ancient people found iron. These space rocks that have fallen to Earth are made of an iron-nickel alloy that hardly rusts. And so the ancient masters began to process this heavenly iron, creating amazing things. One of the famous examples is the dagger of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, made more than 3,300 years ago from meteoric iron. Considered a gift from the king of Mitanni, it can be seen in a museum in Cairo. In the U.S. state of Illinois, they even found iron beads made from a meteorite. Iron was so valuable that only kings and priests used it. Iron in the Bronze Age is like a gift from heaven. Iron lost its sacred meaning only with the advent of the Iron Age. A hoard of gold jewelry. Archaeologists, while exploring the Karnak temple complex in Luxor, have discovered an ancient vessel filled with gold jewelry, beads, and figurines of Egyptian gods. According to experts, the find dates back to the 26th dynasty of Egypt and is about 2,600 years old. Jewelry in ancient Egypt was not just luxury items, it was considered magical amulets that protected the owner from evil and disease. They played an important role not only in life but also in the underworld, providing protection for eternity. Among the artifacts, the figurines of the god Amun, the goddess Mut, and their son Khonsu stand out. They were probably used as amulets and worn around the neck. Amun was considered the king of the gods and the patron of the pharaohs, and later united with Ra, becoming the embodiment of both the visible and invisible deity. All the found items will be restored and possibly exhibited in the Luxor Museum. Homeland of plantation slavery. At the end of the 15th century, the Portuguese began to populate the island of São Tomé, which is located 240 kilometers from Gabon. Wood, clean water, and fertile soil for sugar cane all made the island an ideal place for colonization. But São Tomé was not as harmless as it might seem. Dangerous malaria has turned the island into a real trap. And what did they decide to do, you may ask? relocate here prisoners, Jews and slaves from Africa. It was they who created the first plantation economy in the tropics, where the entire process, from growing cane to building mills, was built on slave labor. By 1530, this cozy island became the main sugar producer for Europe, even overtaking the famous Madeira. Among the archaeological finds on the island is the Praia Malau sugar factory, an old building with unique 16th century architecture. On the first floor there were living quarters, and on the second, industrial premises where sugar was cooked. However, as in many stories, there were difficulties. Due to humidity, rapidly growing forests, and slave uprisings, sugar production ran into problems. As a result, the Portuguese moved to Brazil, taking with them the foundations of their sugar business. Today, scientists continue to study São Tomé, looking for traces of old factories and slave dwellings in order to learn more about life on the island and preserve its unique cultural heritage. Giant stone sarcophagus. This sarcophagus belonged to the powerful pharaoh Ramesses III, who ruled Egypt during the 20th dynasty. It is a true masterpiece of ancient Egyptian sculpture and ritual art. The enormous stone coffin is covered with carefully engraved symbols and scenes from the Book of the Dead, which were intended to help the pharaoh pass through the afterlife and achieve eternal life. On its side walls are depicted protective goddesses such as Isis and Nephthys, spreading their wings, symbolizing divine patronage and protection. Hieroglyphic inscriptions tell of the exploits of Ramesses III and his connection with the gods. Interestingly, this sarcophagus was reused by the priest-kings of the 21st dynasty, showing how even royal tombs were reused in later eras. Today, this magnificent sarcophagus is kept in the Louvre, where it can be seen by thousands of visitors. Time is relative. You've probably heard the popular fact that's often mentioned on the internet. Cleopatra lived closer in time to the moon landing than to the construction of the pyramids. And it's true. Cleopatra VII, the last queen of Egypt from the Ptolemaic dynasty, lived from 69 to 30 BC, while the construction of the Pyramid of Djoser began around 2667 BC. And the first landing on the moon took place in 1969, an impressive time difference. But there's an even more amazing fact. At the time of the construction of the Egyptian pyramids, real mammoths still roamed the earth. Of course, not in Egypt, but on the remote Wrangel Island in the Arctic Ocean. The last population of mammoths died out around 1355 to 1337 BC when the famous pharaoh Tutankhamun ruled Egypt. The history of dinosaurs is no less interesting. For example, Tyrannosaurus rex, known to everyone as one of the greatest predators, lived closer to our time than the stegosaurs that are often depicted alongside it in films and books. Stegosaurus disappeared about 144 million years ago, while tyrannosaurs appeared much later, about 67 million years ago. These historical comparisons are striking and a reminder that familiar associations about antiquity can be deceptive. America is waiting for little men from Saturn. America is once again gripped by excitement, this time because of unidentified flying drones. The situation is reminiscent of previous waves of mass interest. From flying saucers to Chinese weather balloons, it seems that this trend is repeated again and again, growing with new details and conspiracy theories. Amid the many videos circulating on the internet, some drones look more like a product of computer graphics. Special effects imposed in After Effects are easy to recognize for a person who is at least a little familiar with editing. However, this does not prevent the videos from causing heated discussions because viewers tend to believe what they see. The Biden administration claims that these are civilian commercial drones, and Donald Trump calls on the government to shoot down any unidentified objects and reveal the whole truth. A peculiarity of the American mentality is a love of conspiracy theories. Drones, like flying saucers in the past, immediately become the subject of speculation. They are already causing talk of alien intelligence, agents of Saturn, or even preparations for the inauguration of a hypothetical alien leader. Some recall black helicopters that allegedly abducted people on orders from reptilians. And here comes the alarm again, this time because of drones. It is curious that the excitement around unknown objects occurs with enviable regularity. Remember the Chinese balloons that flew over the USA for a long time until they were suddenly noticed. Then panic gripped society, which, however, quickly subsided. Perhaps the new wave of drone fever will soon fade away, or maybe we really are on the threshold of a new chapter in the history of strange phenomena. But for now, it seems the world is simply entertaining itself with new mystical theories to distract itself from more pressing problems. New species of predator. Scientists have discovered the skull of Bastatoden Certos in the Egyptian desert, a new species of predator that lived 30 million years ago. This large carnivorous mammal belonged to the extinct group of hyaenodonts and occupied the top of the food chain, hunting primates, ancient hippos, and elephants. Bastetodon got its name in honor of the goddess Bastet, patroness of cats and protector from troubles. Its muzzle and teeth really resemble those of a cat. This animal was comparable in size to a leopard, had powerful jaws and sharp teeth, allowing it to be a formidable hunter. The discovery was made in the Fayum Depression, which millions of years ago was a green forest and is now turned into a desert. This place is a storehouse of knowledge about the ancient ecosystems of Africa. Hyaenodonts dominated among predators, but climate change and the emergence of more advanced competitors led to their extinction. Now their place in nature has been taken by the ancestors of modern cats and dogs. Mysterious substance in a coffin. Archaeologists in northwestern China's Xinjiang region have made a shocking discovery. In an ancient coffin that was about 3,600 years old and contained mummies from the Bronze Age, a mysterious substance was found on the neck of one of the women. Today, scientists believe it is the oldest cheese in the world. The researchers isolated DNA from the substance and found that it was kefir cheese made from cow and goat milk. This discovery is important for understanding the origins of kefir and the evolution of probiotic bacteria. Jiao Mei Fu, from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and colleagues analyzed the bacteria, yeast, and proteins in the sample, which allowed them to identify the ancient cheese. The research suggests that kefir cheese was important to people at the time. It may have been placed in the grave as part of burial customs or as food for the afterlife. Interestingly, two types of cheese were found in the coffin, one made from goat's milk and one from cow's milk. Genetic studies have shown that the microorganisms in the cheese are similar to modern kefir strains found in East Asia and Tibet. This raises questions about the geographic origins of kefir. Previously, kefir was thought to have originated in the Caucasus, but new today points to a possible second source in Xinjiang. These results suggest that kefir has spread around the world via multiple routes, and its history is closely tied to the evolution of human culture. Hidden secret of the past. Recently, a team of Russian scientists led by a crystallographer from St. Petersburg State University deciphered the structure of one of the rarest minerals on the planet, uramphite. This unusual mineral was first discovered 70 years ago at the secret uranium deposit Turakavak in Kyrgyzstan, but at that time its detailed structure could not be revealed. And recently, luck smiled on the scientists again. They found uramphite at the Russian deposit Beshtau in the Stavropol territory. Uramphite is a uranium micas and contains ammonium. This mineral has a bright luminescence and was previously used in photography, but despite numerous attempts to study it, its exact structure remained a mystery until 2023. Thanks to the latest equipment, scientists were able to study in detail a crystal only a few millimeters in size. The mineral turned out to be unstable, so finding a high-quality sample is a real stroke of luck. Only 11 uranium minerals with ammonium are known. Most of them were found in the United States, where ammonium is formed from organic matter, such as decomposed animal remains. Pharaoh Paopi II. Pharaoh Paopi II, Neferkar, who ruled Egypt during the 6th dynasty of the Old Kingdom, ascended the throne in 2278 BC when he was only 6 years old. His mother became the young ruler's guardian, helping him govern the country during the early stages of his reign. Over time, Paopi showed himself to be a very unusual person, and there are records of his strange behavior. One of the most famous examples is his requirement that slaves pour honey on themselves so that flies would be distracted by them without bothering the pharaoh himself. This invention may seem absurd, but it shows how Paopi tried to solve even the most simple inconveniences. Meanwhile, the fly in ancient Egypt became a symbol of fortitude and bravery, and gold awards in the shape of flies were awarded to soldiers for special merits. Such decorations, in fact, can be considered the first Medal of Honor in history. A letter from Paopi II to Harkuf, the ruler of Aswan, who led an expedition to Nubia, has also survived. In it, the pharaoh insistently requested that a dancing pygmy be brought to the court for entertainment. This letter gives an idea of his interests and how Egyptian rulers used imported foreigners for court entertainment. Pop II had one of the longest reigns in history. He reigned for about 94 years, according to other sources, 64 years, and lived perhaps to the age of 100, becoming one of the most memorable pharaohs of ancient Egypt. No mummy. Do you know the legends about small creatures that lived underground? The Ainu, the original inhabitants of Japan, and the American Indians described them as undersized creatures that lived in the underworlds. Perhaps this is even the prototype of the mysterious gnomes. In 1932, in the mountains of San Pedro, gold diggers blew up a rock and discovered a strange mummy weighing only 340 grams and 46 centimeters tall. This dwarf was covered in a strange dark substance, and his eyes seemed incredibly bulging. Scientists have long thought who it is: a doll, a mummy of a child, or evidence of some ancient race. Unfortunately, the mummy disappeared, and one can only guess about its fate. Many ufologists consider it a possible proof of a subhuman or even extraterrestrial race. Where this mysterious mummy is now, no one knows. Egypt rewrites history. Archaeologists in Egypt have stumbled upon something absolutely amazing. In Hierakonpolis, an ancient city on the banks of the Nile, which was the cultural center of Egypt before the pyramids, a cemetery was discovered, but not an ordinary one. Dr. Renee Friedman and her team waited for the usual excavation, but what they found made them gasp in surprise. In the tombs, along with human remains, lay unexpected guests: baboons, wildcats, and even hippos. These animals are not usually found in Egypt. The most amazing thing is that all these animals were well groomed. They received treatment, food, and even lived in captivity for a long time. According to Friedman, it could be the world's first zoo exhibit. These animals were symbols of power and might, demonstrations of wealth and control over wildlife. This zoo is one of the most amazing discoveries in Egypt. Imagine how these ancient Egyptians took care of their wild pets, using them in religious rituals and demonstrating their power. Coffin on the roof. For centuries, human bodies have been the subject of anatomy studies, often using executed criminals as the primary source. However, as the death penalty declined in the 18th and 19th centuries, medical schools began to suffer from a shortage of bodies for research. This problem gave rise to resurrectionists, people who dug up freshly buried corpses to sell to anatomists. To protect against such thefts, cemeteries were equipped with cages, traps, and hired guards. Some bodies were even left in dead man's houses so that decomposition would make them useless to robbers. But Englishman Henry Trigg found his own extremely unusual way. Henry lived in Stevenage in the 18th century, was a wealthy grocer, and was respected in the community. However, one day he witnessed thieves digging up a body in the cemetery. This shocked him so much that he decided not to let this happen to him. In his will, Henry asked that his body be placed in a lead coffin and placed under the rafters of his own barn, away from the cemetery. He even included a punishment for his relatives if his last will was violated. After his death in 1724, his body was indeed placed in the barn, which attracted a lot of curious visitors. Over time, the barn became an inn and Henry's coffin became a local landmark. However, his remains suffered a sad fate. Visitors and soldiers took them for souvenirs, and by the beginning of the 20th century, only a small part of the skeleton remained. Today, Henry's coffin still rests in the barn, but the remains are lost, leaving behind only legends about his ghost. Underground tunnels of Cusco. Mysterious underground Inca tunnels almost 2 kilometers long have been discovered in Peru. The discovery was made by archaeologists studying the ancient city of Cusco. The tunnels connected the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, the Temple of the Sun, and important religious buildings. The buildings, built from massive stones, are striking in their strength and engineering mastery. They are able to withstand the strongest earthquakes typical for the region. Scientists are sure that the Incas used these hidden paths for the secret movement of priests and military leaders between strategic and ritual sites. Despite legends about treasures, nothing has been found inside yet. Unusual remains of ancient monkeys. In one of the caves on the island of Hispaniola in the Caribbean Sea, fossilized remains of ancient primates were found, which probably became the prey of a large predatory owl. The discovery was reported in the Journal of Human Evolution. Excavations were carried out in a flooded cave in the Dominican Republic, where archaeologists discovered 7 skulls, 5 lower jaws, and many other skeletal fragments. Scientists came to the conclusion that these remains belonged to the species Antilothrix bernensis, which became extinct about 10,000 years ago. According to the study, the primates that lived on Hispaniola weighed up to 2 kilograms and probably lived in small families, eating fruit. Experts suggest that the remains ended up at the bottom of the cave after an attack by a predatory bird. Professor Siobhan Cook notes that marks on the bones indicate that these primates fell victim to a large owl. The skulls and jaws show damage typical of birds of prey. Baghdad Battery. And how do you explain this find from the past which combines the technologies of the present? In 1938, archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig discovered a mysterious earthenware jar in the Iraqi desert. Inside the jug was an iron rod wrapped in copper. It looks like an ancient battery that is 2,000 years old. One scientist even took a copy of such a Baghdad battery, filled it with grape juice, and got electricity. The TV show Mythbusters also tested this theory, and it turned out to be plausible. Could the ancient inhabitants of Iraq have used this jug as a battery? Maybe they just kept the scrolls in it, or was it a cunning trick in the temples? Scientists are still arguing. Unfortunately, the original jug was stolen in 2003, and now we can only guess what it actually served for. Perhaps this jar is the key to the secrets of ancient technologies, or maybe it's just an interesting artifact. Church stained glass. Stained glass windows in ancient churches are stunning with their intricate depictions of biblical scenes and vibrant colors. However, there is an interesting and unpleasant secret behind the creation of these works of art. To achieve the desired shades and strength of glass, craftsmen added an unusual ingredient to the mixture: urine and sometimes human blood. During the manufacturing process, metal oxides were mixed with urine, which helped improve the adhesion of the coloring agent to the glass during firing. This method gave the stained glass a special brightness and durability. Thus, in the creation of these beautiful windows, which are hundreds of years old, not only the skilled hands of craftsmen were involved, but also very unexpected materials. Stained glass is not only a symbol of spiritual light and beauty, but also evidence that art sometimes requires unconventional approaches and secret ingredients. Beads of the Silk Road. Archaeologists have studied unique beads from the tomb of a mysterious woman nicknamed the Red Princess of the Silk Road. The burial was found in Xinjiang, China, about 15 years ago, but it has recently attracted special attention due to its unusual jewelry. The age of the find is more than 2,000 years. Experts examined 8 bright red beads and found out that they were made of rare Mediterranean corals. Analysis showed that the material was brought from the shores of the Western Mediterranean. This speaks of the long distance and amazing trade relations of ancient China, because corals were considered a luxury at that time and were valued almost as much as gold and precious stones. Scientists suggest that these decorations came to Central Asia along the Silk Road, a trade route connecting the East and the West. Apparently, the beads were not just decoration, but a symbol of wealth, prestige, or power of a woman. Engineering miracle in Egypt. Ancient Egypt continues to amaze modern researchers again. This time, an amazing tunnel was discovered under a temple in the ancient city of Taposiris Magna, which experts call a geometric miracle. The tunnel was found at a depth of 13 meters. Its length is 1305 meters, and its height is about 2 meters. It is carved into sandstone and resembles the famous Eupalinos tunnel on the Greek island of Samos, which is considered an engineering miracle. The exact purpose of the tunnel is still unknown, but some of its parts are flooded with water. Archaeologist Martinez, who has been searching for the lost tomb of Cleopatra VII since 2004, believes that the tunnel may lead to important discoveries. Taposiris Magna was founded around 280 BC by Ptolemy II, one of Cleopatra's ancestors. Archaeologists believe the temple was dedicated to Osiris and Isis, deities with whom Cleopatra was closely associated. The team also plans to explore the Mediterranean Sea, as a series of earthquakes between 320 and 1303 caused part of the temple to collapse into the water. In my previous videos, I described how tunnels were discovered connecting Lake Mariu to the Mediterranean. A creepy custom in ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, women's bodies were often set aside for mummification until later after death. This was not done for religious reasons, but to reduce the risk of unwanted actions by the priests. By delaying the embalming process, the ancient Egyptians were trying to make the female body less attractive and thus prevent cases of necrophilia. Since the ancient Egyptians attached great importance to preserving the body for the afterlife, the preservation of the dead was of utmost importance. In this regard, a measure was developed for women that was considered protective. This custom, although grim, demonstrates how important the ethical and physical protection of the body of the deceased was in Egypt for preserving honor and a peaceful transition to the afterlife. 6th century Anglo-Saxon sword. Archaeologists have discovered a 6th century Anglo-Saxon sword in an ancient cemetery near Canterbury. The find is in excellent condition and resembles the legendary weapon from the Sutton Hoo burial. The sword is decorated with gilded and silver patterns, and runic symbols run along the blade. The weapon's special feature is a ring on the pommel, which, according to scientists, may symbolize loyalty to the king or nobility. The remains of a wooden scabbard trimmed with beaver fur were preserved along with the sword. In addition to the sword, a gold amulet with an image of a snake or dragon was found in the burial. Such jewelry usually belonged to noble women, or was passed down as memorable family heirlooms. Excavations show a clear division between male and female burials. Weapons and armor predominate in male graves, while brooches, buckles, and jewelry predominate in female graves. Also among the artifacts are items of Scandinavian and Frankish origin, indicating cultural ties between the Anglo-Saxons. At the moment, 12 graves have been examined, and there are about 200 more burials ahead, which may hide equally valuable finds. Archaeoraptor, a forgery of the 21st century. The following story involves the well-known National Geographic. Archaeoraptor became famous in 1999 thanks to a National Geographic exclusive content that claimed to be the link between dinosaurs and birds. However, after only a few weeks, the magazine was forced to admit that the Archaeoraptor was a fake, consisting of the remains of various animals glued together by Chinese farmers. After this failure, the creature was nicknamed Piltdown Bird in reference to the famous Piltdown Man forgery of the early 20th century. Mummy of a mysterious creature. There are still many secrets on our planet that continuously offer archaeologists and scientists new mysteries. So in Yakutia, in Russia, they accidentally discovered an unusual find. So far, archaeologists, together with scientists, are trying to figure out who they found there. A dinosaur, a previously unknown species of animal, or maybe a Siberian chupacabra. The story began when workers brought soil from a local diamond mine. One of the workers noticed a strange creature among the stones. It turned out to be a mummy. At first, he thought it was a small dinosaur because workers had already found fossilized ostrich eggs here. The find turned out to be in a layer of diamond sands dating back to the Mesozoic era, 260 million years old. It could be a real sensation. Thanks to the cold Siberian climate and permafrost, the remains of this mysterious creature are perfectly preserved. Workers handed over the mummy to scientists, who at first could not determine what kind of animal it was. They took a picture of it and sent the photo to colleagues. A day later, it turned out that this was not a dinosaur, but an ordinary sable. This mammal resembles a small, dexterous bear with a long body and sharp teeth. Thus, the find was relatively fresh, but scientists still cannot understand how the sable got into the multi-million-dollar soil. It is very likely that the animal could crawl into a hole and fall into a deep crevice where it turned into a mummy. Although this mummy did not turn out to be a dinosaur, but just a sable, this story will help people realize that there are still many unknowns on our planet. Who knows, maybe one day the workers will really discover a genuine fossilized dinosaur mummy, or even something more unusual and mysterious. In the meantime, we will go to ancient Egypt. Viking sunstones. Imagine the Vikings, mighty seafarers who conquered the seas from Norway to North America. In sunny weather, everything was simple. They looked at the sky and swam where they needed to. But what to do if the sun is not visible? This is where the mysterious sunstone, or solarstein, comes into play. This crystal was not just a beautiful jewel, but also a kind of Viking compass. With it, they could determine where the sun was in the sky, even if it was hidden behind clouds or fog. The researchers puzzled for a long time what kind of stone it was until they realized that it could be Icelandic spar or cordierite. These crystals could split the light and show the path of the sun to within a few degrees. This story tells us that it is not necessary to use the technologies of the future. Our ancestors managed, with the help of primitive objects, to navigate the seas and oceans at any time of the day. Dyed clothing in good condition. Archaeologists have discovered the oldest remains of dyed fabric in the Netherlands, dating back some 2,800 years. Fragments of woolen material with a red and blue checkered pattern were found in an elite burial site from the early Iron Age in the province of North Brabant. The study showed that the clothing probably belonged to a noble woman buried with rich bronze and iron jewelry. The fabric was preserved due to oxidation of the metal of the bracelets on which it was pressed. According to scientists, these fragments could have been part of a long-sleeve dress or another complex outfit. The analysis revealed that natural dyes were used for coloring. The blue color is obtained from woad, Isatis tinctoria, a plant known since ancient times. The red tint is given by carmine, obtained from insects, probably Polish cochineal, Porphyrophora polonica. This find confirms that the inhabitants of the region already in the 8th century BC had mastered complex textile technologies. Before that, the oldest examples of dyed clothing in Europe were found in Italy and Austria. Now, the Netherlands is also among the countries where dyes and patterned fabrics were used long before antiquity. Drake's Plate of Brass, a historical forgery. The next story is about a joke that went too far. Between 1577 and 1580, the British explorer Sir Francis Drake circumnavigated the world and, stopping in what is now California, left a copper plate at the site he named New Albion. This artifact has become a kind of holy grail for historians studying the early colonization of America. In 1937, the American historian Herbert Eugene Bolton spoke about finding the plate. The California Historical Society then purchased the artifact for $3,500 and donated it to the Burcroft Library in Berkeley. At that time, some scientists expressed doubts about the authenticity of the plate, but Bolton and his colleagues stubbornly continued to insist on its authenticity. A few decades later, in the late 1970s, new research confirmed that the plate was a fake. The brass plate was later revealed to be a runaway prank played by members of the historical E. Clampus Vitus fraternity, including Ezra Dane, the alleged creator of the forgery. The fake was created to tease Bolton, who was also a member of the fraternity. Instead of revealing the truth, the conspirators decided to keep playing for fear of damage to their reputation and career. This story not only demonstrated the thoroughness of modern research in the search for truth, but also showed how complex and delicate the process of identifying and assessing the authenticity of historical artifacts can be. However, unlike other deceptive finds, which had a much more devastating effect on the scientific community and worldview, Drake's brass plate was an important lesson for future generations of researchers. The next story will be about a mysterious mummy. Sanctuary of the God of War. In France, archaeologists have found a sanctuary dedicated to the god Mars from the 4th century AD. Next to it, a Roman necropolis was found with funerary items about 1,500 years old. Excavations are taking place near La Chapelle de Fougères, where traces of a necropolis and a sanctuary were found back in 1984, and archaeological research began in 2018. The sanctuary is probably dedicated to Mars, the Roman god of war. Dozens of swords and spears, presumably ritual, and a small figurine of a deity were found at the excavation site. Mars was at first the god of fertility and nature, but later became the god of war, like the Greek Ares. Archaeologists have found the remains of furniture, brooches, military items, and a set of coins. The sanctuary is believed to have been in use during the early Roman period, and it was abandoned in the 4th century AD. Near the sanctuary, dwellings with household items and ceramic utensils were found. In addition, a Roman necropolis with approximately 40 burials from the late Roman period up to the 5th century has been excavated. Funerary objects were found there: silver bracelets, hairpins, buckles, glass and pearl beads, ceramics, and footprints. In one burial, a dagger and horse harness with iron and bronze decorations were found. All found artifacts were sent to storage for further study. And the next find is interesting because we will find out when drugs became popular in Europe. Female chief and mythological creatures. Archaeologists have discovered a throne room in Peru that dates back to the 7th century AD. Researchers found this ancient hall with columns and colorful frescoes in the coastal valley of Panamarca, more than 400 kilometers from Lima. Scientists believe that the room was built by the Moche culture about 1,300 years ago, and it belonged to a female chief. The frescoes on the walls depict a woman on a throne receiving visitors. Archaeologists suggest that this may be an image of a ruler. The entire space of the hall was decorated with mythological scenes without empty surfaces. Archaeologist Jose Ochatoma says that the scenes on the frescoes tell about the ideology of the Moche, and another room was discovered nearby, the Hall of Intertwined Serpents. There, researchers saw frescoes depicting warriors and mythological creatures that have not been seen before in the archaeology of Peru. The Starving of Saqqara. We simply cannot ignore ancient Egypt, the world of pharaohs and pyramids. This civilization has always excited the minds of scientists, but there is one mystery that has not yet been solved, and that is a sculpture called the Starving of Saqqara. It depicts two strange figures with large heads, and no one knows who they are. The language of the inscriptions on the sculpture also remained unknown. This statue is like no other. It remained in a private collection until it arrived at Concordia University in Canada in 1999. Experts from all over the world are still trying to figure out if this is a unique example of ancient art or a cunning fake. So what is it really? The real truth about the Starving of Saqqara is still hidden. Maybe some of you will be able to find out the truth. Ancient marble disc. The underwater world of the Mediterranean Sea hides not only colorful fish, but also the secrets of ancient civilizations. Israeli diver David Shalom made an incredible discovery off Palmaccan Beach. He found a 2,400-year-old marble disc at the bottom of the sea. There are only 4 such discs in the whole world. Ancient ships were decorated with such discs, which served not only as decoration but also as protection from the evil eye. These sea amulets looked like eyes, helping sailors navigate the water and warn of possible dangers. This disc has a diameter of 20 centimeters, one side is flat and the other is convex, and most importantly, traces of paint are still preserved on it. Thunderstone. In 1782, the famous monument to Peter the Great, the Bronze Horseman, was erected in St. Petersburg. Much has been written about its creation, but the statue's pedestal, known as the Thunderstone, is a unique engineering achievement in itself. This giant granite monolith was found near St. Petersburg in the village of Konaya Lakhta. Initially, it was 13 meters long, 8 meters high, and 6 meters wide. Its weight reached 2,000 tons. Transporting such a giant in the 18th century without cranes or excavators was an incredible task. It was decided to transport it in winter using frozen soil and ice. The stone was placed on wooden sleds, and copper balls were placed under them, which rolled along specially prepared chutes. Hundreds of workers using winches and ropes moved it to the Gulf of Finland. This stage alone took 4 months. The monolith was then loaded onto a barge and delivered to St. Petersburg. However, during transportation and subsequent processing, it significantly decreased in size. Out of 2,000 tons, 1,200 tons remained. Thunderstone is the largest monolith in history that was moved manually. Even the ancient blocks of Baalbek remained in place, and this granite giant became part of one of the most recognizable monuments in Russia. Tiara of Citefern, Deception of the Louvre. More than 100 years ago, the Louvre, which houses one of the greatest collections of artifacts, made a serious mistake. The story began on April Fool's Day, April 1st, 1896, when the Louvre announced the acquisition of an amazing artifact, the Tiara of Citefernès, the golden crown of the Scythian king of the 3rd century BC. Despite a large staff of experts who recognized the tiara as genuine, the British Museum and the Imperial Court Museum in Vienna refused to buy it. The Louvre paid 200,000 francs for the tiara, unaware that it was a fake. Soon, experts began to doubt the authenticity of the tiara. Among them was the German professor Adolf Furtwängler. The Louvre defended its purchase and accused critics of being hostile to the French. For 6 years, the museum stubbornly refused to admit its mistake. However, the news of the scandal reached Odessa, Ukraine, where Israel Rukamovsky, the master who created this fake, lived. He stated that he was commissioned to make the tiara as a gift to an archaeologist friend and could not imagine that his work would be passed off as a real artifact. In the end, the Louvre admitted the mistake. This story is a reminder of the importance of thorough examination, even for museums as respected as the Louvre, in order not to be questioned and not to lose reputation. And now just imagine how many fake exhibits from the ancient world are stored in our time in all museums of the world, and how many such Odessa masters created ancient crowns, swords, coins, and gold jewelry. Funerary decorations of a girl. Archaeologists studied finds made on Mount Scopus in Israel and found a lead coffin with valuables such as gold earrings, a hair clip, a gold pendant, gold beads, carnelian, and glass beads. These pieces of jewelry were found by archaeologist Yael Adler back in 1971, but have only now been researched and published. A team of archaeologists studied the newly found gems. They consider it a very valuable find. On part of the jewelry, symbols of the Roman goddess of the moon, the patroness of young girls, were found. If a girl died early, jewelry with symbols of the goddess was placed in the grave for protection in the afterlife. Other gold earrings and jewelry were found during excavations on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem in 1975. Such burials and decorations are well known in the Roman world and allow one to draw conclusions about the population of Judea at that time. After the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem and the expulsion of the Jews, the city was settled by settlers from the Roman Empire. The burial of a young girl with her jewelry is a touching archaeological find. We can imagine how her parents or relatives put these valuables in her grave, hoping that they will help protect the girl in another world. Despite the passage of centuries, we can all understand these feelings of loss and the desire to protect your child, no matter what. Thus, these archaeological finds help scientists to better understand the history and culture of the population of Judea during the period of the late Roman Empire. These decorations and burials of young girls testify to the mixed population made up of immigrants from different parts of the Roman Empire and their beliefs and rituals, which they brought to the life of the city. Giant Jade Dragon. Chinese archaeologists have discovered the largest jade dragon from the Neolithic Hongshan culture. The artifact was found in the Yuan Baoshan rock tomb located in Aohan Province, Inner Mongolia. The jade dragon measures 15.8 centimeters in length, 9.5 centimeters in width, and 3 centimeters in thickness, and is a unique find, which has no analogs in the region. The excavations also revealed architectural remains, fragments of human bones, tombs, hearths, and various artifacts, including jade and painted ceramics. Among them were tripod bowls and basins. Carbon-14 dating showed that the object belongs to the late Hongshan culture and was created more than 5,000 years ago. The oldest drawings of Neanderthals. In the cave of La Roche-Cotard in France 57,000 years ago, Neanderthals created real art. Inside the cave, amazing drawings were found, made simply with fingers. Dots, lines, spots. No matter how you interpret them, this is the art of ancient people. Researchers at the University of Tours, led by Jean-Claude Marquet, have recreated these drawings in 3D and analyzed the layers of the cave. But the most interesting thing is the fact that this cave was closed about 57,000 years ago. And this means that modern man has not yet inhabited this area. Thus, only Neanderthals could be the authors of these drawings, which are possibly 75,000 years old. Today, we know much more about Neanderthals and their complex culture. These drawings are real proof that they were far from being as primitive as we thought before. Message from aliens. Easter Island, lost in the South Pacific Ocean, became famous for its giant stone statues, moai, and mysterious tablets with rongo-rongo writing. These ancient tablets, covered with strange hieroglyphs, still remain one of the greatest archaeological mysteries. Scientists believe that rongo-rongo is the writing of the Rapa Nui civilization, which flourished on the island until the 18th century. The story of their discovery begins in 1864 when the French missionary Eugene Ayraud first noticed wooden tablets covered with unusual signs. The tablets were made of Toramira wood, which grows on the island, and were found in almost every home. However, most of these artifacts soon disappeared due to internecine wars and destruction. About 25 tablets have survived, and their study revealed a unique writing style reminiscent of inverted boustrophedon. This method of writing signs was previously found only among the Incas. The tablets depict figures of animals, plants, and anthropomorphic creatures. Scientists assume that these symbols could have been used to record rituals and myths. Of particular interest are the similarities between Rongorongo and other ancient scripts. Some signs resemble the hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt, India, as well as the symbols of the Harappan civilization that flourished in the Indus Valley. Parallels were even drawn with the writings of the Kuna Indians from Central America and the drawings on the island of Sumatra. This gives rise to theories about possible connections between ancient cultures across the ocean. Attempts to decipher Rongorongo are still ongoing, but it has not yet been possible to fully understand these writings. One version is the description of rituals with sacrifices to the gods. Another hypothesis, more fantastic, suggests an extraterrestrial origin of these signs, hinting at contact with alien civilizations. Otherwise, how could people living on different continents have similar writing in those distant times? And in our time, having a huge amount of communication with each other through phones, satellites, and the internet, we speak different languages. The mystery of Rongorongo remains unsolved, but its study continues to inspire scientists and enthusiasts around the world. Maori ocean ship. One of the most important archaeological discoveries of recent decades has taken place in New Zealand. Father and son Wayne and Ben Dix found the remains of an ancient ocean-going canoe, a waka, on the coast of Chatham Island, Rakohu. At first, they did not even understand what exactly they had discovered, deciding that it was just an old tree. However, after the first excavations, it became clear. In front of them was a huge wooden ship which could be about 500 years old. Archaeologists have already extracted from the ground more than 400 fragments of the vessel, made from New Zealand trees, pukatea, tatara, and rimu. Experts believe that the find is related to the Moriori people, the indigenous inhabitants of the Chatham Islands. Perhaps this is the legendary Waka Rangihawa, mentioned in their ancient texts. The canoe found is distinguished not only by its size, but also by its unique design, testifying to the high skill of the Moriori seafarers. Archaeologists believe that studying the waka will help us better understand how the region's islands were populated, the routes ancient peoples took, and how far the sea routes of the Maori and Moriori extended. Sarcophagus of Tarragona, a scam that deceived twice. In 1850 in Tarragona, Spain, workers discovered a marble sarcophagus with unusual images which told the story of Hercules, who discovered the Strait of Gibraltar. Local antiquarian and archaeologist Bonaventure Hernandez y Sanauja claimed that the images showed a connection between Egypt and Spain about 3,600 years ago. Most scientists disagreed with his conclusions and rejected the sarcophagus as a fake. However, in 1916, the American archaeologist Arthur Frottingham accidentally used a fragment of images from the sarcophagus in his work, presenting it as authentic Phoenician iconography. This has led to repeated deception of the scientific community. In 1921, the French historian Paul Paris exposed the deception and again dismissed the sarcophagus as a parody of Egyptian art. The story of the Tarragona sarcophagus represents the dangers of fraud and wrong conclusions in archaeology. In this case, the deception was exposed, but this story tells us that the same fake find can deceive several times. Runemo rune, mystery or deceit. Have you ever heard of an ancient dam in Sweden adorned with Viking runes? It is said that these runes were created many centuries ago, but over time they were significantly erased and lost their readability. For a long time it was believed that their secrets were lost forever. However, in the 18th and 19th centuries, scientists again became interested in these ancient runes, although they could not make out their content. Icelandic archaeologist Finn Magnusson was one such explorer. He was a recognized expert in Old Norse literature and runes. Eventually, he was able to convince the Royal Danish Academy of Sciences and Letters to fund an expedition to study the Runemo runes in 1834. When the expedition arrived, Magnusson announced his startling discovery. He had deciphered the runes. According to him, this is a poem praising King Harald Wartooth for his bravery at the Battle of Brawwall. This news caused a storm of delight and was hailed as an archaeological triumph. But soon the outstanding Swedish chemist Jöns Jacob Berzelius decided to study these famous runes on his own. After researching, he made a shocking statement. The carved signs were not actually runes. They turned out to be natural cracks and abrasions in the stone. This scandal cast doubt on Magnusson's reputation and led to heated discussion in the scientific community. As a result, the history of the Runemo runes remains a mystery. Someone believes that this is the lost text of an old poem, and someone is sure that these are just natural cracks in the stone. The most interesting thing is that scientists and historians still continue to argue about what is actually hidden behind this ancient dam. Thanks to cases such as Runemo, modern archaeologists and researchers have become more careful in their conclusions and make sure to check information from several sources before claiming a great discovery. Nevertheless, the history of Runemo can be a fascinating and useful lesson for young explorers and all those who are interested in archaeology and history. It reminds of the importance of critical thinking, skepticism, and the pursuit of truth. I think each of you in the city has similar stone dams and bridges on which ancient runes can be seen in the cracks. Pharaoh's Mobile. This is one of the most inexplicable archaeological finds discovered in the tomb of the ancient Egyptian ruler Thutmose III. Archaeologist Amin Fahmy discovered this strange object back in 1923 during excavations in the Valley of the Kings. Then the researchers did not quite understand what it could be and placed this item in a museum. After 100 years, they decided to return to it to carefully study it. The device shocked scientists with its resemblance to a modern mobile phone. It was a thin rectangle of gold and jade engraved with symbols resembling buttons. Were there time travelers who could bring a modern device into the past? After all, often in the tombs of the pharaohs, archaeologists managed to find bas-reliefs on which the ancient Egyptians hold something similar to a modern smartphone in their hands. Some researchers have suggested that it may have been a decorative ornament or a status symbol, but no one has been able to pinpoint its purpose. Materials and manufacturing technology, which were unusual for that era, were especially questionable. At the beginning of the 20th century, photographs of this item and the tomb where it was discovered were immediately leaked to the press. The exotic find has given rise to many theories and speculations. Some claim that this is evidence of the contact of the ancient Egyptians with extraterrestrial civilizations or time travelers. Others consider this a joke or a hoax. Despite numerous studies, the Pharaoh's Mobile remains a mysterious artifact that has no analogs in the history of archaeology. This find continues to inspire scientists for new research and makes us think about the unsolved mysteries of ancient Egypt. The Guardian with a Mysterious Smile. On the Greek island of Kea, on top of a hill, there has been a mysterious stone lion for over 2,600 years. His wise smile, reminiscent of both the Cheshire Cat and the Mona Lisa, is shrouded in mystery. Locals call him Levtus and believe that he once almost destroyed their island. The Lion of Kea was carved in the 6th century BC from a single stone. According to one version, its author could have been the same architect who built the Athenian Acropolis. It is surprising that the statue has survived in such good condition despite thousands of years of rain, wind, and scorching sun. But the most intriguing thing is the legend about its origin. According to legend, water nymphs lived on Kea, whose beauty aroused the envy of the gods. The angry Olympians sent the lion to destroy the island. However, Kea survived, and a temple was built in its honor, and the lion itself remained a symbol of that mythological battle. No one knows whether its smile was intentionally carved by the sculptor or whether it is a bizarre play of time and weather. But one thing is certain, the Lion of Kea still enchants tourists and remains the keeper of an ancient legend. Bucket Crown and Unicorn. This story is connected with the notary Philip Houben, who was very fond of archaeology. He found an ancient burial with strange objects. It contained a skull, a copper band, and a copper shackle. Houben thought it was the grave of the prince and his crown, but then it turned out that in fact he found the metal parts of an old bucket. The second story is about the scientist Otto von Guericke. He found bones of various animals in a cave near Quedlinburg and assembled the skeleton of a unicorn from them. But then scientists realized that these were bones from mammoths, bears, and deer. The horn was part of a mammoth tusk. So the unicorn has remained a fairy tale animal, although its popularity has not yet decreased. And I will end this video with the last find for today, which turned out to be an unintentional deception. Ritual axe, 4,500 years old. In China, in the city of Wuxi, archaeologists have discovered an ancient ritual weapon, an engraved axe that is 4,500 years old. The axe belongs to the Liangzhu culture. one of the most developed cultures in China at that time. This culture lived in the Yangtze River Delta, but when the floods occurred, the people of Liangzhu were forced to leave their capital and settlements. This led to their complete extinction around 2300 BC. Scientists have found 329 stone tools, 73 stone and bone arrows, and many other ceramic and jade artifacts. The most interesting is the axe, on which images of tigers, patterns of clouds, and birds are engraved on both sides. The axe was found on a sacrificial platform and shows signs of wear and damage. Scientists believe that the axe was not used in battles, but in rituals and ceremonies to symbolize power. Liu Baoshan, head of the local Archaeological Institute, said the patterns on the axe were made with a harder stone tool. This is the first tiger engraved axe found in the region. Now we will dive into history even deeper and find out what our ancestors ate more than 100,000 years ago. They believed in immortality. Archaeologists in Turkey have unearthed rare Thracian artifacts that will help us learn more about this ancient civilization known for its quest for immortality. Excavations have been underway at the ancient city of Harayan Taikos in northwestern Turkey since 2000, uncovering statues, coins, burial mounds, and medical artifacts that help us understand the Thracians. Recent finds include clay figurines of the Great Mother, the most important deity in Thracian culture. Professor Nessi Atik, a leading archaeologist and dean of Istanbul's Rumeli University, said the Thracians were a powerful civilization in the 4th century BC that occupied parts of modern-day Bulgaria, Greece, and Romania. The Thracians left no written records, but their lives were described in the annals of the Greeks and Romans. Excavations at the Acropolis have uncovered religious artifacts related to the Great Mother and the god of health. The Thracians believed in immortality, considering their king symbolically married to the Great Mother, which granted them eternal life. Medical objects were also found: a bowl for preparing medicines, containers and bone spoons for measuring ingredients, which speaks of the medical knowledge of the Thracians. Incredibly rare bed. An extremely rare piece of furniture has been discovered beneath the bustling center of London after going unnoticed for centuries. Archaeologists have begun excavations near the Holborn Viaduct in preparation for the construction of an office block. While digging in the damp earth, archaeologists have uncovered an ancient Roman cemetery containing 5 wooden coffins and a completely preserved wooden burial bed. The bed, which is almost 2,000 years old, was made from high-quality oak. Its legs were intricately carved and the joints were held in place by small wooden pegs. Archaeologists believe the bed was dismantled before it was placed in the grave, but it may have been used to carry the deceased to the burial site and was intended for the afterlife. Such burial beds are known from depictions in the Roman Empire, but this is the first complete example to be found in Britain. As well as the wooden furniture, archaeologists have found human remains, beads, a lamp, and a glass vessel. Later ruins have been found near the Roman burials, including evidence of a medieval leather workshop. The Roman Empire invaded Britain in 43 AD and held power for about 400 years. The cemetery near Holborn Viaduct was in use during this period. Remains of a man over 1 million years old. Archaeologists have discovered unique remains of an ancient man who lived about 1.4 million years ago in the Cima del Elefante cave in Spain. The skull fragment found is the oldest ever discovered in Western Europe and represents a previously unknown species of man. The discovered part of the face, nicknamed by scientists Pink in honor of the Pink Floyd group, preserved the left cheek and upper jaw with teeth. According to experts, this ancient man was very different from the later inhabitants of the region known as Homo antecessor. For example, Pink had a flatter nose, more reminiscent of Homo erectus, the first species to leave Africa about 1.8 million years ago. At that time, the climate of Europe was much milder and the valleys in the Cima del Elefante region were covered with dense forests and inhabited by hippos, bison, and deer. Pendant with a mammoth, a mystery solved centuries later. In 1889, the American archaeologist Hilborn T. Cresson showed the world an unusual artifact, an ancient pendant carved from oak bark and decorated with an engraving of a mammoth. This jewelry was special because mammoths disappeared from North America more than 10,000 years ago. But from the very beginning, there were doubts about its authenticity. Cresson stated that he found the pendant near the Delaware River 25 years ago, but could not explain why he was silent about this discovery for so long. He said that he did not understand the value of the pendant, which seems strange to an archaeologist. Cresson was already known for his not-so-good deeds. He lost his job due to the theft of artifacts and selling them to collectors. As a result, the pendant was recognized as a fake, but no evidence of this was found, so it was forgotten for many years. However, in the 1970s, interest was renewed in the pendant, and it even graced the cover of Science magazine in May 1976. People began to believe in its authenticity again, and even suggested that the pendant could be up to 40,000 years old. The real truth about the artifact was established only in 1988, when radiocarbon analysis showed that the age of the pendant is only 1,100 years old, which determined its creation around 885 AD. Thus, the mystery of the mammoth pendant was solved centuries later, and this case became a reminder of the importance of a scientific approach and careful analysis in archaeology. On the other hand, although this pendant is not 10,000 years old, it can still be classified as an ancient artifact. Giant snails. Scientists have discovered the earliest evidence that humans ate giant snails. In a cave in southern Africa, paleontologists have found fragments of the shells of large land snails, the approximate age of which is from 70,000 to 170,000 years. Scientists used to know that people were eating snails about 49,000 years ago in Africa and about 36,000 years ago in Europe. But these old shells showed signs of heating, possibly during cooking, and the scientists concluded that people were eating snails much earlier than they thought. The find suggests that our ancestors who lived in the cave consciously ate snails. Snail meat is highly nutritious, rich in protein, iron, potassium, calcium, and omega-3 fatty acids. It is assumed that the ancient giant snail shells belonged to the ancestors of modern ones, which were the size of a human hand and weighed more than 1 kilogram. In other words, there was a lot of good quality meat in the snails. People now eat snails all over the world, including the Mediterranean, Southeast Asia, Northeast India, Nepal, and South America. Prior to this study, archaeologists believed that people began to regularly eat snails and other small animals only after the end of the last ice age. But new data refute this view. In the Border Cave in southern Africa, numerous archaeological excavations have been carried out. Fragments of shells were also found there, which had colors from beige to brown and gray. Since heating can change the color of the shell, the variety of shades indicates that they have been exposed to fire. To test this theory, scientists heated modern-day shell fragments of giant land snails to temperatures ranging from 200 to 550 degrees Celsius for varying periods of time from 5 minutes to 36 hours. They observed changes in the color of the shells, weight loss, breakage, and changes in the chemical composition of the pieces. The color of the new shells changed to white or gray, like some ancient fragments, and also heating caused the formation of small cracks, similar to those on old shells. The highly digestible fatty protein from snails may have been as well an important food source for the elderly and young children who cannot chew solid foods. From delicious snails, we will again go to Asia, where an unusual tomb awaits us. Stone Age tunnels. Imagine the maze of tunnels underground in Europe that stretches from Scotland to the Mediterranean. These mysterious tunnels date back to the Stone Age and have been around for 12,000 years. Archaeologists such as Heinrich Kusch are simply amazed by this miracle. The tunnels, only 70 centimeters wide, stretch for hundreds of kilometers underground. There are even rest areas. Who built them and why? Maybe they were shelters from enemies or mystical passages of elves and dwarves. What if someone in ancient times tried to build subway lines? What is it? A mystery of antiquity or something more? The secrets of these tunnels may never be revealed, but they are a reminder of how amazing and incomprehensible ancient civilizations can be. To dig deep underground in the Stone Age without the technology of the future, such a tunnel is an unrealistic task. Ceramic drainage system. 4,000 years ago, the rains in China were so strong that up to 50 centimeters of water could fall in a month. But the Chinese of that time did not sit idly by. They built an awesome drainage system to fight this water madness. Each house in Pinglientai village had its own mini ditch, and these grooves were there for a reason. They ensured the safety of every inhabitant from the water element. And in the squares and in public places, giant ditches were laid which were connected to ceramic pipes. These pipes, like a puzzle, were assembled from separate sections and directed water away from the settlement. And most importantly, these antique pipes are still in great shape. They were part of the crucifixion story. An ancient Georgian painting depicting the crucifixion of Jesus Christ has drawn attention to a mysterious object that resembles a UFO. In the background behind the cross is an object that looks like a giant button with legs. One of the characters in the painting even points at it with his hand, which seems to be a deliberate emphasis by the artist. The origin of the painting and the name of its author remain unknown, although it is believed that the image was created about 1,000 years ago in the 11th century. The church where the painting is located dates back even earlier, to the 5th century, although the current building was erected between 1010 and 1029. Some believe that the object could represent guardian angels, although this contradicts traditional depictions of angels of that era who were usually depicted with wings. Others suggest that the artist may have intentionally depicted something resembling flying saucers as part of a larger symbolism, perhaps an allegory or an element of religious myth that has not survived into modern interpretations. The painting continues to generate interest and controversy, offering a unique perspective on the combination of religious art and unexplained symbols that remain a mystery to this day. Little Ice Age. Genghis Khan, known for his cruelty and the creation of one of the largest empires in history, had an unexpected impact on the planet's climate. The Mongol leader's military campaigns resulted in the destruction of huge numbers of people and the devastation of large areas. As a result, when these lands were left without people, forests began to actively regenerate and once again covered huge areas. The restored forest began to absorb significant amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which led to a temporary cooling of the climate, the so-called Little Ice Age effect. In fact, Genghis Khan's actions indirectly contributed to the reduction of CO2 levels in the atmosphere. Although his goal was clearly not to improve the environment, the impact of his conquests on nature was unexpected. He unwittingly became one of the first historical climate heroes. This story is a rare case of tragic historical events having a positive impact on the climate of our planet. Ancient Russian bagpipes in the shape of a bird. Recently, archaeologists have discovered an amazing musical instrument in Veliki Novgorod, a leather bagpipe bag in the shape of a bird from the 12th century. This is the first such find in the territory of ancient Rus, which changes our understanding of the musical traditions of our ancestors. The bagpipe bag is made of the finest leather. Its length is about 72 centimeters, width 45. The most unusual thing about the find is the manufacturing technology. The leather was glued in 2 layers without the use of threads, which ensured tightness. This is absolutely atypical for that time. Historians have previously found individual parts of bagpipes in Novgorod. For example, in 2015 they found a playing pipe and in 2018 a blowing pipe. But a complete one-piece bagpipe in the shape of a bird has been found for the first time. This means that Novgorodians did not just use musical instruments borrowed from other cultures, but had their own tradition of making them. By the way, the shape of the bird could have had a symbolic meaning and was possibly connected with ideas about the spiritual world or natural forces. Similar traditions are known in other regions of Eastern Europe. For example, in Belarus and Poland, the bagpipe is still called duda and koza. Shadows of the Dead. After the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki by the United States in 1945, survivors were struck by eerie shadows on the streets and walls of buildings, silhouettes of people, trees, bicycles, and other objects. These imprints were silent witnesses to the last split second before people died. They looked more like photographs than shadows. As Dr. Michael Hartshorn of the University of New Mexico School of Medicine explained, this effect is caused by the intense light and heat released by the explosion of an atomic bomb. When an atomic charge detonates, an incredible amount of energy is released, which spreads in all directions at great speed. Any object standing in the path of this energy creates a screen, protecting the space behind it. This space remains darkened because the surface around it is subjected to a powerful thermal effect and discolored. As a result, a clear silhouette of the object is formed, as if imprinted on the surface. These shadows are a kind of death, photographs taken in a moment of the brightest light and capturing the last moments of people's lives. Trilithon. In Baalbek, in the foundation of the Temple of Jupiter, there are 3 huge stone blocks that still amaze even experienced archaeologists. They are called trilithon. Imagine the scale. Each block weighs almost 800 tons, and the dimensions are impressive. About 19 meters long, a little more than 4 meters high, and about 3.6 meters wide. Even now, lifting and moving such giant stones would be difficult, and the ancient builders did not have cranes or special equipment at their disposal. It is still not entirely clear how exactly these giant stones were delivered and laid. It is believed that the stone blocks were moved on special wooden sleds, using logs and hundreds of workers. Some even assume that aliens participated in the construction, but serious scientists reject such hypotheses. Trilithon is not just the foundation of a temple, but a striking example of how complex the engineering knowledge of ancient civilizations was. Perhaps future discoveries will help to solve the mystery of the appearance of such massive structures in antiquity. New Mayan ruins. Archaeologists are finding more and more Mayan ruins thanks to new technologies and satellites that help to detect structures hidden under dense forests. As Texas Tech University archaeology professor Brett Houck told a NASA conference, scientists have discovered more Mayan sites in the last 10 years than in the previous 150 years. The main tool that helps in this is LiDAR, laser scanning technology. LiDAR allows you to see through dense forest vegetation and reveal structures that were previously hidden. With the help of this technology, archaeologists are finding more and more ruins in what is now Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize. One such project is a study in northeastern Belize, where a team of scientists is studying an area of 650 square kilometers. In just a few days, scientists have discovered 28 new large sites. The technologies of the past used by the Maya to manage water and farm may still be useful today. Tim Murtha of the University of North Carolina at Charlotte noted that the Maya adapted to changing climate conditions by creating systems of terraces and reservoirs to combat droughts. These ancient techniques may hold important lessons for today's changing climate. Flood helped archaeologists. The recent powerful flood in Libya unexpectedly helped archaeologists. After Storm Daniel flooded the ancient city of Shahat, the water washed away the soil and exposed an amazing artifact, an antique tombstone from the time of the ancient Greeks. It is made of limestone and has been perfectly preserved to this day. This find was a real gift for archaeologists since Shahat, ancient Cyrene, was a major scientific and cultural center of the Hellenistic and later Roman world. The philosopher Eratosthenes, who was the first to measure the circumference of the earth, once taught here, and the city itself was famous for its temples, theaters, and libraries. Immediately after the discovery, the Libyan Antiquities Authority created a team of specialists to protect and study the valuable monument. Now the slab is in the hands of experts who have already confirmed its authenticity. In the near future, archaeologists are going to find out the details of the inscriptions, which can tell more about the life and people of ancient Cyrene. Nebraska Man, a mistake, not a scam. The Nebraska Man is an incident that took place in the U.S. in 1922 and is similar to the Piltdown Man story, except that it was a mistake, not a hoax. Harold Cook, a rancher from Nebraska, discovered a tooth that was erroneously identified by Henry Fairfield Osborne, president of the American Museum of Natural History, as a hominin tooth. This led to the creation of the Nebraska Man concept. Over time, scientists discovered other skeletal fragments and determined that the tooth actually belonged to an extinct species of pig-like mammal, the peccary, and not a hominin. By 1927, the Nebraska Man idea was officially debunked. This case damaged the reputation of the archaeologists, but unlike the Piltdown Man, it was the result of a mistake, not a deliberate fraud. However, this error was used in discussions around the ape process in America and became an argument for creationists and other opponents of the theory of evolution. 12 severed hands. A very unusual and creepy find in Egypt has frightened archaeologists. Archaeologists have found evidence that the ancient Egyptians cut off their hands. They found severed right palms in 3 pits of a Hyksos palace in northeastern Egypt. The Hyksos were the first foreigners to rule Egypt. The palace was built around 400 BC. Judging by the way the hands look, they belonged to 12 adults, including 11 men and possibly 1 woman. The researchers noticed that the hands were cut off carefully and placed in the pits with open fingers. fingers. There have been many cases in our history when people lost their fingers or hands due to theft. Scientists believe that in this case, the hands were cut off not as a punishment, but rather as part of a ritual that took place in the palace. Severed hands may have been prizes during a public event. In the old days, it was believed that hands had magical properties and could help the dead in the afterlife. Therefore, they were brought as a gift to the gods. Prior to this discovery, the story of ancient Egyptian chopping off hands was known only from inscriptions on tombs and temple reliefs, but now scientists have found real evidence of this practice. To be honest, you don't always want archaeologists to find confirmation of ancient texts. Some moments of history let them remain on paper. Human flesh medicine. Until the early 20th century, human remains were often used in medicine and in a variety of forms. They were usually ground into a fine powder, which was then added to hot chocolate or turned into pills. It was believed that eating a certain part of the body could help cure diseases in a similar part of the body. For example, powder from crushed skulls was considered an effective remedy for headaches. The remains of Egyptian mummies were especially valuable and were widely used as a remedy. It was the high demand for mummies for medicine that led to the fact that so few of them have survived today. The belief in the healing properties of mumio was so strong that Egyptian mummies were supplied to Europe in huge quantities, and their use was considered normal practice.
Penny from Maine. Known as the Goddard penny, this Viking coin was discovered near an old American Indian settlement in Maine in 1956. Could it be that Vikings and Indians once met? The only known Viking site in America is Canada, not Maine. Some scientists think it might be a fake. Does anyone think that Goddard himself or one of the archaeologists put the coin? But so far, this coin is a real mystery that has been worrying researchers for more than half a century. History reminds us that the past is always full of surprises and unknown secrets. Babylon's vision of Earth and beyond. The Babylonian world map, or Imago Mundi, is one of the oldest known maps, dating back to around the 8th century BC. The clay tablet depicts the ancient Babylonians' view of the Earth. The center of the map depicts Babylon, located on the Euphrates River. The map is surrounded by important geographic features: Susa to the south, Urartu to the northeast, and Haban to the northwest. Beyond this area are triangular regions that researchers believe represent unknown lands or mountainous regions. The map is surrounded by a salt river called the Bitter River, which they believe ran across the entire planet. Mythical inscriptions mentioning the creation of land and sea by the god Marduk are also noteworthy, making the map not only a geographic, but also a cosmological artifact. The UFO connection comes from the triangular regions beyond the map. Some researchers believe that the ancient inhabitants of Babylon tried to depict unknown lands, which they associated with divine or extraterrestrial beings. Slave quarters. Archaeologists in Italy have discovered a room in an old villa near Pompeii. Apparently, slaves lived there. Inside, they found 2 beds, but only one with a mattress, as well as all sorts of gizmos and the remains of rodents. To think even slaves didn't have bars or locks. This suggests that the slaves were kept under control not so much by chains, but through a system of slavery. The villa where the room was found is near Pompeii, a city that was buried under ash from the eruption of Mount Vesuvius 2,000 years ago. The entire city and its inhabitants were buried, and their houses, belongings, and stories were preserved under a layer of ash. The most secret company on Earth. Attempts to resurrect woolly mammoths raise many questions. World scientists believe that attempts to resurrect ancient giants are kept in the strictest secrecy. Participants in this work do not disclose details, which looks suspicious. The greatest progress in this area is demonstrated by the American company Colossal Biosciences. They managed to introduce several mammoth genes into the DNA of rodents and obtain woolly mice. The next step is editing the genome of elephants to create a hybrid that is as similar to a mammoth as possible. However, even if the experiment is successful, questions arise about the survival of such animals in the modern environment. The North has changed, and their return may unpredictably affect the ecosystem. One of the project's researchers admitted that cloning is a topic for which it is easy to get funding. This raises doubts. Is the revival of mammoths really possible, or is this just a scientific myth to attract money? Mysterious remains in a lead coffin. After the 2019 Notre Dame Cathedral fire, archaeologists discovered 100 unknown burials beneath the cathedral during restoration work.
including a mysterious lead coffin. French researchers believe that the remains may be those of the famous French Renaissance poet Joachim du Bellay, who died in 1560. The remains, found in 2022, were nicknamed the Horseman due to the structure of the bones, which indicate that the man had been riding a horse from an early age. Du Bellay, whose tomb was thought to be lost, was believed to have been buried in the cathedral next to his uncle. However, attempts to find him in 1758 were unsuccessful. Researchers from the National Institute for Preventive Archaeological Research have confirmed that the mysterious horseman may be Du Bellay. The coffin, which was different from the others in its lead structure, attracted the attention of scientists. Research showed that the man died at the age of about 30 from tuberculous meningitis, which was not typical for most of the elderly men buried in the cathedral. Scientists from the University of Toulouse conducted additional tests and found that the man buried in the cathedral suffered from the same diseases that Du Bellay described in his poems. Despite this, the slight discrepancy in the geographical origin of the horseman and the poet remains a mystery. Despite minor doubts, everything points to the fact that the remains belong to Du Bellay. Women with no scent. In the northwest of Namibia, there lives an amazing tribe called the Himba. Its women never wash with water, but despite this, they look well groomed and have no unpleasant odor. How is this possible in the semi-desert conditions where water is considered an incredible luxury? The Himba tribe arose about 500 years ago when part of the Herero people moved across the Kunene River to the territory of modern Namibia. The main occupation of the Himba has always been cattle breeding, and the life of people completely depends on cows and goats. Even houses around settlements are built in the shape of a circle to protect livestock. Due to the lack of water, Himba women are taught from childhood to save it and not use it to wash their bodies. Instead, they have a special mixture called atjizi. It is prepared from animal fat, red ochre, and local plants. Women apply it to their skin and hair every day, thanks to which they acquire the famous terracotta hue. The atjizi mixture protects from the sun, retains moisture, and has antibacterial properties, preventing the appearance of an unpleasant odor. In addition, instead of traditional washing, women use smoke baths. They sit over smoldering coals with comifera, myrrh, wood resin, and other aromatic herbs that cleanse the body and kill bacteria. The Himba have their own beauty canons. Reddish skin symbolizes strength and health, and hairstyles with many braids and decorations show the social status of a woman, her age, and marital status. Today, the traditional Himba way of life is gradually disappearing. Young people are increasingly going to the cities, and traditions are forgotten. But you can still meet women who keep the ancient secrets of hygiene and beauty of their amazing people. Support the channel with your like and comment under the video. The more of you archaeology lovers there are, the more videos will appear on the channel. Thank you for your views. Bye, everyone.